Good afternoon, and welcome to Strategic Transitions, the do's and don'ts of executive career moves, a health systems CIO production. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. My name's Anthony Guerra. I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of Health Systems CIO, and I'll be your moderator today. We're looking forward to your participation, especially with today's webinar. You can send in your questions or comments anytime in the Q&A box, and we'll take them later in the program. Just so you see how we're going to spend our time today, we're going to go about 35 to 40 minutes with our main panel discussion featuring Chuck Christian, VP of Technology and CTO with Franciscan Health, and Chuck Podesta, CIO with Renown Health. Unfortunately, Joy O, who is going to be with us today, had something come up at work, which I'm sure you're all used to, that she had to attend to. So we're going to have a fun conversation with Chuck and Chuck. Let's start off with you, Chuck Christian. Can you give us an overview of your organization and role?
Sure. Happy to, Anthony. How are you? And thanks for the opportunity to share today. I'm with Franciscan Health. We're a 12, 13 hospital system, depending upon how you count them. We have probably about 350 to 400 locations, all physician practices, urgent cares, imaging centers, standalone ambulatory surgical centers, those type of areas. We cover just a little south of Indianapolis all the way up to Chicago. So we have about, I had the pleasure of being responsible for all the infrastructure in the organization and being a part of the corporate team. So it's fun. And so I'm having a good time.
Excellent. Chuck Podesta?
Yeah, thank you, Anthony. Thank you, everyone, for taking time out of your busy schedule. Hopefully, this will be valuable to you. But yeah, I'm the CIO from Renown Health out of here in Reno, Nevada. I've been here a little over 4 years now. And Renown is technically a 3-hospital system, one very large acute hospital, 800 beds, and then one smaller, more community-based type hospital, about 250 beds. And then we also have a children's hospital embedded in the acute hospital. We also have an insurance company called Hometown Health, about 100,000 subscribers that we support there. And we also have a very close relationship with the University of Nevada, Reno Medical School, 50-year relationship. We're rapidly kind of morphing into an academic medical center. We have some residency programs launched already, and more to come. And we've got about a 5 to 10 year strategic plan we're in the first year of implementing. That's all about growth. If you know what's happening in Northern Nevada right now, with a lot of people moving in from California and other states, our year-over-year growth is about 6 to 7% right now. So it's a good place to be, but we've got a lot to do on the ambulatory care side, urgent care centers, similar to what Chuck was talking about, in a growth strategy. And you can imagine the impact on IT with that type of growth strategy. So happy to be here. Thanks.
All right. Very good. Excellent. So we've got a lot of experience. You gentlemen have been around a while, not to date
So are
you.
you suggesting that we're old, Anthony?
I'm just saying, no, seasoned. The word is
Seasoned.
well seasoned.
Well seasoned. Okay.
Yes. So, we're going to take this from a lot of different angles, but let's start with the idea of how do you know when it's the right time to consider making a move? There's this idea in my head of, sometimes an opportunity is going to come along when you're not looking for it or not even thinking about it, or you think perhaps you're fairly content, an opportunity presents itself. Obviously, you want to consider that. And then there's the idea of you're ready to go. So let's start with the ready to go part. How do you know when it's time to move on? Chuck Christian, let's start with you.
Well, I think, I used, I have, fortunately, I've been around for quite some time, and I used kind of an adage my dad gave me a long time ago. He was a sheet metal guy and a welder. He worked for Goodyear for 43 years. It was the only real job he ever had other than raising his boys. And he told me that, if when it's not fun anymore, it's time to go do something different. And so I think, Anthony, I transitioned. My first career was in radiology, 14 years there. And then I got into healthcare IT when this little thing called DRGs came out back in the 80s, and we started automating hospitals. And I've been doing IT ever since. And so I think it's, um, sometimes the job moves around you. When I was doing implementations and integrations, the company changed around me 3 or 4 times. The joke was we just, rather than having placards on our doors, we just put whiteboards up so you could, change your title in the company you work for. And then there comes a time that when you realize you've just been there too long, you're not being effective. Some of the relationships around you have changed. And I think if you're aware of yourself, when it's time to go.
Very good, and we'll do some follow-ups on that. But Chuck
Okay.
Podesta, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, in preparation for this, Anthony, I kind of went back on my career. This is my 30th year as a CIO, and it gets back to your statement of whether we're old or not. I choose to say I'm wise. Somebody actually corrected me one day. I said, that only makes me old. And they said, no, that makes you wise. But I did the math at 30 years, CIO, 8 different organizations and 18 different bosses in that particular period of time. So, and I kind of went back and thought about like the different moves I made and the motivations around those and things like that. And one of the things is I never say no. A lot of times, whether you're content in a particular job, actually, when I do go into a job, I always look at it from the standpoint of what's my mission for this particular organization. And then when I complete that mission, I might be open to more opportunities. I always like to complete the mission. Or if I'm in a maintenance mode, I find myself in a maintenance mode. I don't like that. For me personally, that's not exciting. So, but I always look for. I never say no. So, if you get a call from a recruiter, things like that, and on the face of it, it's in a place you might not want to live or whatever, and you immediately say, don't do that. Investigate that. Find out what's going on in that organization. You can say no later. During the interview part, maybe you don't even make it to the interview process, but go and you'll learn through the interview process. You'll learn through just the whole recruiting process as well. And again, you keep that confidential, so it's not like your organization knows you're even doing that. But you'll learn through that process. And lo and behold, I found that in a couple of instances of my career, a couple of those moves that I made were 2 organizations I thought in the service, no way, I'm not going. Doesn't make sense. I wouldn't want to live there, too far away from family, whatever it might be. And I ended up taking a job because I went through the process and each step of the way that I learned more and more about that organization, the more interested I was in the particular job. So that's what I would say.
So let me follow up with you on that, Chuck Podesta.
Yep.
I personally am very, I don't know, I'm very concerned. I get anxious. I don't like to go down those conversations if I don't think I'm interested, because I don't want to waste their time. I don't want to waste my time. And I feel like I would feel bad. The further I go down the road, let's say I think initially I'm not interested and I go down the road and one thing leads to another. The concern there is, one, I'm wasting everybody's time. At least I think I am, although you said that could turn around at some point.
Yep.
But what about those issues that, you know, that investigating, like if the other side knew I was just kind of checking it out for the hell of it, they wouldn't like that.
No, I don't, think about it this way as well. When you work with, and we'll probably get into recruiting companies, is, when they contact you, it doesn't mean they're looking at you as the A player.
Right.
They need to present 3 to 5, maybe 6, how many people, right? You might be somebody that they have on the bench that they're presenting just to add numbers. So, don't think it's all you're wasting their time. They may be wasting your time.
Well, it's a good point.
From that standpoint, right? You'll figure that out right away. depending on the role, and when you look at the job and you look at yourself and you see whether there's a fit or not. If there's not the fit, then they're just throwing you in there as a name, just to add that into the mix. But you got to be selfish. Sorry. I mean, if I'm wasting somebody else's time, well, tell me I'm no longer a candidate at that point. But you got to be selfish in your career. You really do. I truly believe that. It may not sound right, but I'm all about me when it comes to
Yeah.
my career. And if I view I'm wasting my time, yes, I will pull out. But I don't really care if I'm wasting somebody else's time. That may sound mean, but I don't care.
Okay. No, I think I want to get Chuck Christian's thoughts on this.
Yeah.
Maybe Chuck, maybe a line would be, once I know I'm not interested, for example, if anybody tells me that they're going to apply for a job and do an interview, they know they don't want it, but they're doing it just for practice. Like that bothers me. And I think you could be burning bridges because someday you may want to work at that place. I don't know. What are your thoughts around being ethical about all this, but also looking out for yourself?
Well, I think you're overthinking it. So, but that's Anthony's way. So
That
I
is,
agree
it's
with,
so right.
I
Yeah.
know, I agree with Chuck. Is that, I've always said yes. And, there's a couple of lectures I do. And one thing I've always told my children is that the right answer to any question when somebody asks you to do something is yes. At some point in time, you can always back out and do something different. But I think you need to at least go through the process because you made the list for some reason. I mean, I've gotten several phone calls and even I've been around as long as Chuck has that I'm still amazed that recruiters will call me and want to know if I'm interested in this position, and my typical answer is no, thanks, because I'm not looking to make a change. But the other thing I would suggest to you, even though you say yes, make sure you do your due diligence. And to Chuck's point, be selfish because you're not only impacting your own self, but if you have a family, wife, children, who are going to probably follow you. Or at least be without you for some period of time, you have to be selfish for them as well and make sure that it's the right thing to do. I've been very fortunate. A lot of the jobs I've had, I had my first CIO job. Actually, I started before there was a certain title called CIO. I had it for 24 years. And then I was recruited away. And then the other jobs were based upon relationships, people that I knew that I went to work with. And those have been extremely rewarding because you have shared values and shared missions and stuff. And so I think you have to go through the process, but but you also have to be true to yourself. Is that if you're not looking to make a move, if everything is copacetic and you have conversation with your wife. I'm married to a critical care nurse. There was at one point in time she had a great career, and she followed me to my next job, and her career changed. So that there are sacrifices that we have to understand that get made in order for us to make career changes or change employers.
Excellent. You mentioned recruiters.
Yep.
Let's talk a little bit about that because there is a point when backing out is not appropriate. You don't want to burn a bridge with there's a few very influential recruiters in this industry. Probably in every industry, there's a
Yep.
few handful of very influential recruiters.
Sure.
And I think of course, you want to be fair and ethical with them. And if you go too far down the road and then say, you know what, never mind, when there was no reason for you to change your mind. You had all the information. You were very far along the process. So, what about burning bridges with recruiters? What are the things you can't do in the process that can get you in trouble that are not right? Chuck Christian, any thoughts there?
Well, I think the first thing is be truthful and make sure that you know who the recruiter is. They have a good reputation. I actually was burned by one because they misrepresented me to the company, and they actually hired me. And then I realized what they had done, and so I rescinded my acceptance.
Oh, wow.
And this was years ago because I didn't want to start a relationship or an employment on that note. because of a misrepresentation, because that recruiter was working to, they need to make a placement.
Right.
And so there was another recruiter I worked with, one of the ones you mentioned that are extremely well known in the industry. That placement, I accepted that position, and I didn't do my due diligence on the organization, and realized that they were never going to be financially viable, and that one didn't last very long until they actually had to back out and sell the organization to a for-profit, and then I had the opportunity to step out.
All right, Chuck Podesta, your thoughts?
Yeah, I've worked with almost all of them in different scenarios, and I do know the kind of the good ones from the not so good ones. So depending on who's calling, uh, based on my knowledge of them, if it's this one, then I'm going to pay attention because I've had good experiences with them, right? Versus another one. But when you talk about going down the path, and Chuck mentioned it, be truthful. I'm very truthful with them right up front. It's here's where I am, here's what I'm doing. I'm happy where I am right now. But tell me, let's spend a half an hour to an hour. Tell me about the this organization. Tell me about it. I'll do just a quick interview, with the firm, right? And see if there's anything that's interest. Because a lot of times they'll ask, well, yeah, I know you're happy where you are, but what would be the thing that would, make you interested in this particular job? And you can kind of go through that with them in a very short period of time. And you can go from a yes to a no, but right then and there. You haven't met anybody else. The next step is usually maybe the team within the recruiting company. So you get a little bit deeper into the position. So you have these steps along the way
Yeah.
that you can pull out without burning a bridge,
Right.
because they haven't presented you yet, right?
Yeah.
Once you get to the point where you're presented, then you've got to think about it in a little bit different way. Because now you're being presented. When you get down that road, they're going to come back. You can still pull out because you haven't interviewed with them yet. They're going to come back and say, "Oh no, Chuck, we looked at your stuff. The client looked at the stuff. They don't want you. That's fine." Or they want to do the next step of the interview process, right? At that point, you can still pull out without, but once you get in the interview process, you better have a specific reason, something that's come up that makes sense, right? It could be anything at that point. But you're right, it's got to be a specific reason. You just can't say, uh, you know, I was bored. I thought this would be a great thing to do, and then now I'm not interested anymore. You have to have and again, it gets back to what Chuck said, be truthful every step of the way, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, and
Well, and the other
go
thing
ahead,
too,
Chuck.
Anthony, I want to say is that there's a name that something about you and the industry, your position, what you've done in the past, puts you on that list.
Yeah.
There are recruiters out there that I know that they're just looking to vacuum up some folks, but they have to present those in people in a very particular way, and so I typically don't respond to the people that I don't know. I've been around long enough. I know who they are, and they know who I am, and so I think that that's the other thing you have to be careful of is making sure and it's not a cattle call, that that you're being asked to come in, because a lot of the recruiters will have what I call the tier one folks that will make the initial contact and want to know if you're interested, and then if you are, if you're willing to listen, then you'll actually get connected to what is a real recruiter. Unless that you know who they are, and then the recruiter will contact you directly because they think that they may have a great fit. If you have reputations like Chuck does, even with or without his cowboy hat, they know him through his industry reputation. And so, I mean, that's the other thing you have to maintain. I mean, I think Ed Marks does a really good job of talking about your brand, and I'm not suggesting that you create that in the industry, but that brand follows you around as with the recruiters and the rest of the industry as well.
That's
Yeah.
a great point. Go ahead, Chuck
Yeah.
Podesta.
No, I was just going to say, I agree with Chuck. I mean, it's right. The recruiters, once they get to know you, and that's why you say yes, because you want them. Another point I want to make is, especially a new recruiter, when you say yes, even if you drop out early in the process, they get a feel for you. They understand who you are. You have that first interview with them, and as Chuck said, they get to know you. They get to know your brand. They know what you're looking for, what you like, what you don't like. So when they, have an opportunity, they're like, ooh, that's perfect for Chuck. That's the call I want to get from a recruiter that knows me, understands me, knows what my hot buttons are, and then presents something to me that is exciting. That's a win, a win-win. And you can only do that by saying yes to these recruiters and at least having that initial conversation.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant advice. Building relationships with the reputable recruiters, and you do that by engaging with them, listen to them, have discussions. I think what helped me get a framework around this and sort of a methodology is always be honest and truthful about your response, about how you feel about what they're presenting to you about your current situation. Then you have nothing to worry about. You're not playing games. You're saying,
Right.
I don't think I'm interested, but I'd like to get to know you. And here is my profile of what I'm up to, what I'm interested in. I'm happy to talk if you want to talk. So you go to the next step. You have discussion, discussion, discussion. You mentioned this sort of watershed moment or a milestone in this process of being presented, right? There's a before and there's an after. Not that you can't change your mind any step of the way, but that is sort of a line there when you start to have interaction and interview with the organization. That's an interesting point.
Right.
And then I think
Yeah.
what really helped me here is the idea that, and I agree with you, Chuck Podesta, it's okay at any point in the process when you're presented with new information to say that that information makes you no longer interested. Thank you. This has been a wonderful process, but I'm pulling out because I just learned this. What you don't want to do is way down in the process mention I'm pulling out because of X when you learned about X 5 steps ago, right? I mean, that's what we're
Correct.
talking about.
Right, right. That's absolutely wrong. And they'll pick up the recruiters they know what they're doing. They'll pick up on that right away. And yeah, you don't want to do that because then you'll be blackballed. And the recruiters, they talk to each other, right?
Right.
These firms, they network just like we do. So you don't want to be on the don't talk to list. And they have those lists. I've talked to them about that. They know, especially in the CIO ranks, they know. They know the good ones from the not so good ones. And, the not so good ones don't get the calls because they've done things like that. But, one example would be you get down to the process, you interview with the senior leadership team, you're going for a CIO job. So it's a senior leadership team. Maybe they break it into 3 or 4 of them. And you just don't have a good feeling of the culture, right? Or you meet your prospective boss. Okay. And you're like, and like I said, I have 18 bosses. Some of them good, some of them not so good. I know the bosses I like to work with. And so I pick up on some things that are like, no, we're not going to have a good relationship here. I'm doing them a favor by pulling out, at that point, especially the boss, because I'm going to be a thorn in his or her side. And we're just not going to get along. And I'm honest about that. I will tell the recruiter, look, I will not be able to work with this person, or there's issues with that senior leadership team from a cultural perspective. I picked that up in the interview process. I don't fit, and I don't want to fit. So I'm honest in that way, and that works. And I said, look, feel free to give that feedback to the organization.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm okay
Really?
with that. Yeah,
Yeah.
do it. Yeah, that's fine. Maybe it will help them. Maybe they'll get introspective and say, geez, why did this person think that we have a cultural issue? Or blah, 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 blah. I try to help them out in that way as well.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with that. I was going to say that just because the recruiter thinks you'd be a good fit, the recruiter may not have read the organization correctly. And they may have not done their due diligence on it. And you really, truly need to see if there's some kind of synergy with the rest of the senior team.
Yeah.
If you're not, it's going to be a painful experience. And so you really have to not be blinded by the position title or the salary or even the location. All those things fit together, but if the work, one of the questions I always ask is, what does success look like to you, for this position? And I've had people that can, very well articulate what they want the CIO to do, and others not so much. And they're filling a role, but if they're filling a role, they're not looking for somebody that's strategic and going to be part of the leadership team. They're just looking to fill the slot. I need somebody to go manage all the IT stuff rather than be part of the senior leadership team.
Right. Right. And you're interviewing them as they're interviewing you. That is
Absolutely.
extremely important that you're doing that. And hopefully they're doing it in groups because you really want to see the interaction between them. And I've seen it in so many organizations. I've stepped out, I've gotten down to that process and stepped back from it because I watched those interactions. I remember one organization, I asked the question, what's the credibility of the IT organization, amongst all of you? And it was almost the entire senior leadership team. And I watched and they all looked at each other like, who's going to answer this question first? And I was told by the recruiter that, the credibility was high, but in their reactions and you're watching body language, I don't, you got the sense of like, there was a problem, but nobody wanted to speak about it first.
Right.
And you also, so that was one, it was like, okay. And then somebody spoke up and said, well, yeah, they do a good job. There was no specifics or anything like that. And then the other thing I watch is the play between them, as you get into the conversations. Are they joking with each other? Are they laughing? Or are they, the body language is, arms crossed. One person speaks, there, you can see you can pick up on the relationship between them. And if there's issues between them, that's not your job to solve, but you certainly don't want to be part of an organization that has cultural issues or team issues at that leadership team, because that is going to be your primary team that you're joining. So to me, it's extremely, forget about what the job is. And as Chuck said, yeah, the place, the location, the money, all that will be meaningless if you go into a job where that senior leadership team meets, they're not honest with each other, and the real meetings happen outside the meetings, right? We know what that's all about. And that's toxic. That's a toxic organization that you don't want to belong to.
And I agree. And the other thing is, when you're interviewing, if the organization is very interested in you as a position, you're going to be interviewed by the people that are going to report up to you, because you have an organization that you're going to run. I mean, I had an interview once that the people that was in the interview, the room was full. I always loved doing interviews by committee. But it was all the people that were going to report to me. And so it was all my directors and managers and that kind of stuff. And, and so I asked them, I said, so tell me what needs to be changed in the organization. And so they ran through it. Most of them, said a lot of the same things. So I asked them, I said, so if you know what needs to be changed, why aren't you doing it? And there was absolute silence in the room. And
That's great.
And so then I shared with them what my management style was and is today. Is I have a tendency to work with people that are adults that know their jobs and know it well. And I told each and every one of them, I said, if you're somebody that I need to stand over and tell you what you need to do next, I am not the guy you want to put in this position, because that's not how I do it. I'll set a direction. Well, it's like piloting a boat. We'll tack differently depending upon which way the wind's blowing, but you need to be expert in what you're doing. And if you're not, then either if I become your boss, either you're going to have to let me mentor you into another way, or you're going to have to select yourself out of the organization, or I'll help you.
Oh,
Yeah, I love that, Chuck. I mean, I'm in lockstep with Chuck on that. And that, a lot of people go in there and it's like, okay, I need to be popular with my team, right? I need to go in there and say, everything's going to be great. I'm going to lead you folks and, to, nirvana, right? And that's not the case. You need to really get into, this is my leadership style. This is how I work. This is what I've learned about the organization so far, depending on how many interviews I've had so far. This is what I'm hearing about the IT department. These are the things I think, is my management style. Exactly. All of that. I learned that early on, luckily. And I've had situations where my first day on the job, 2 out of, say, 5 people that reported to me had already left the organization before I even started. And that's like, thank you. That's 2 problems I didn't have to deal with. I've got 2 open positions now I can do something with. And so, yeah, it's exactly that. Super important.
I think we've moved you off a topic, Anthony, to tell you
no,
the
I'm
truth.
good. We're on topic. We're on topic. That's all. Don't be afraid of telegraphing your leadership style, and it may take care of some of the problems that you would have walked into. They'll be gone before you get there because they don't want any part of it. This idea of using these interviews to detect issues in a leadership team or with a potential boss or even with people who could be reporting up to you that you may not want to be a part of. I guess you have to know what your red flags are, what your appetite is for conflict or for a situation that may not be ideal because every problem is not going to be a deal breaker, right? I mean, not everything's going to be beautiful and roses when you do your due diligence and you go through the process. It's a question of what do I not want to take on? What are the red flags that I don't want any part of versus, okay, I see this one issue with this one either peer or report or whatever, and okay, in general, it looks good. My boss will be good, but this guy's going to be a problem. So, right? I mean, we're looking at the totality, and we have to weigh all this in terms of the opportunity. What's the situation I'm trying or I'm potentially leaving? Maybe I'm trying to get out of something that's toxic and this is much less toxic, right? So there are lots of factors that are going to go, what's the upside on pay?
Totally.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the 2 things I always, back to the recruiter, I always ask them, is this a turnaround situation?
Yep.
9 times out of 10, the recruiter will say, well, no, not, because every organization, every IT organization has its issues, doesn't matter. But I always ask, is this a turnaround organization? And a lot of them, when they say, no, it's not a turnaround, I said, okay, what was the status of the previous CIO? Why did that person leave? And if I hear, oh, they went to a large organization or I'll be like, okay, it's probably not. Oh, they got fired. Well, yeah, I mean, then it's got to be a turnaround. Or why did they get fired? Most likely it's because they weren't running the organization well. There could be other things, but so now my antenna's up. I still might not say no, but I'm because I actually like turnarounds, as you know, I like to fix things. So, and I have a program that I do that, and I enjoy working with organizations to make those changes. But a lot of people don't, so don't like to go into those types of situations. But you want to know that up front, before you get too far along.
Chuck, Christian?
Yes, sir.
Well, we talked, there's an idea in my head or a question in my head in here of, let's say you like turnaround situations, you don't mind a challenge, but I think what we're trying to help people figure out is what's a challenge you can look at and say, I can be effective here. This place is a mess, but all A, B, C, D, and E look good in terms of the support, the resources, the appetite for risk. So I'm good versus this place is a mess and there's no way I can be effective here because of certain issues. Like, what are those red flags in a turnarounds, two turnaround situations? How would you describe one that you're happy to take on and one that you don't want any part of?
Well, I'll give you my own personal take on that. A couple of things that organization, if they say they want to do X, Y, and Z, we talked a little bit. Chuck talked about, the interesting thing out in IT today is AI and how we're applying it to healthcare. If they don't have, if the senior leaders of the organization don't want to make investments in the new technologies and stuff, that's a tell for me. Or if they don't have the money to do it, if looking at their financials and stuff, if they're unwilling to share their financials with you when you're going through the recruiting process, that's one of the first things I asked for, years ago. And how healthy is the organization? Because if they're unhealthy, then it's IT is not going to be a strategic department that you make investments in to move the organization along. It's a department whose costs you need to control. That's that tells you a little bit about the organization and where the CIO is going to report to. Is it going to report to the CFO? Is it? I've done both. I've reported to the CEO, the CFO, and even the senior person on the admin team that wasn't the CEO, the executive vice president. So it depends on where the CIO position is going to report. Tells you a little bit about the importance that the organization puts on it. The other thing is, have you met any of the board members? During the interview process, was the board involved? And the community, how involved they are in the community and those type of things. But most of all, is the people that you're going to work with on a daily basis, your peers, are they going to be supportive of you? Because there's not a CIO that I know in any organization that I'm aware of there's not going to be some level of tension and friction because of the stress that's placed on that senior team in order to get work done. On Charles's team today, who I reported to the CIO, he's got me. I'm an ex-CIO. There's another gentleman that's an ex-CIO. And we have fun because we're not in charge anymore. So we pull at each other a little bit, but we've known each other for a very, very long time. And so we can have that kind of relationship. But I think that you have to look at those red flags about that. And you have to understand what you're willing to tolerate. But, to Chuck's point, I don't think any CIO that's taken a new role, is coming into an organization should look at it as they're going to put their feet up on the desk. Every situation is going to be something that they're bringing you there for a reason. It's not because they want you to sit back and retire in place. They want you to get work done. And at the rate of change that healthcare is moving through today, man, it's blinding. I've been in healthcare for this is my 6th decade. And I've got to see all kinds of changes, but I've never seen the rate of change that we're moving at today. And so, and that's the other thing I wanted to mention. If the organization's not willing to, address and embrace change, you're going to have a long uphill battle because it is changing so rapidly now. And if the organization sucks at it, you're going to have less hair than I do.
Yeah.
Chuck
No,
Podesta, red flags.
Yeah, red flags would be,
Go
I
ahead.
mean, going into, I've gone into turnaround organizations and I've known it's turnaround, but I was confident because the senior leadership team knew it was a turnaround as well. And they were a cohesive unit that I knew I could count on to support me in the turnaround efforts. If you go into if you don't see that, again, we talked earlier about evaluating the senior leadership team during this process. If they're dysfunctional, the IT turnaround could be because they're dysfunctional, not because of the CIO. right? Because that CIO did not get the support that they needed. So you've got to look at it kind of both ways. Let's assume that, yeah, they're not dysfunctional. So it's like, okay, it is a turnaround situation. Like Chuck said, you're coming in for a reason. A couple data points that I look at right off the bat are the percent of OpEx compared to the percent of, the total OpEx of the organization, right? I've gone into organizations that are, upwards 7% and plus of spending compared to the total OpEx of the organization itself. That's way too high. So that's a trigger like, ooh, something's going on there. Then you look at the org chart and all of a sudden you see span of control issues. You see a director with one person under them.
Uh-huh.
You see, these types of things. So you can start to pick up on some things. Ooh, I can have impact right away. How many applications you got running? 1,000? Yeah, that's probably too much. How much, what's your software maintenance spend? $30 million? Depending on the size of the organization, that may be too much. There's metrics that you can use. And like Chuck said, if they can give you that data up front, you can start analyzing some of that stuff and saying, oh, we need an application rationalization program. I need to do a span of control reorganization. I need to probably look at my contracts and get that 7% down to 4%. Though you can start to formulate in your mind how you can start to attack some of the issues that are causing the problems around the turnaround. And that you can focus on customer service. There's other things you've got to do as well from a culture and a mindset, but at least some early conversations, especially with the CFO. And I've had them where I've walked in the door. My first meeting with CFO was, we're spending too much money in IT. She almost fell out of her chair. I had to pick her back up again. She goes, I thought you were going to come in here and ask for more money. I said, no, we're spending too much. And here's where. I mean, you get instant credibility. Now, when I went to that CFO and said, we need to spend money, she was like, Chuck, you got credit, you got all kinds of credibility here because you said we were spending too much. You've reduced that. You've increased the customer service aspects of what we're doing, and a better relationship with IT. What do we need to spend on now? So there's a whole, program that you can employ early on and get returns quickly.
Yeah, so I
Go ahead,
noticed,
Chuck.
I noticed, Anthony, that my old friend Bill Spooner
Yeah.
raised
Let's
a
get to it.
question.
Now, I was going to get to it. Don't
So
think I was
yeah,
going to leave
so
Bill.
the thing about it is, I think it's a great question, and if
Read it.
anybody who's
Why don't you
sitting
read
in,
it, Chuck? Why don't you read the question?
okay, the question is that Bill asked, and Bill and I and Chuck have known each other for 30 years.
Long time.
Yeah, it says, tell me, old timers, how and how often do you self-assess whether you are continuing to have an impact on your organization that you had initially or a few years ago? It's a great question. And I will tell you, and I'll answer it to Bill. It's a question I ask myself every day.
Every
And
day.
at my age, people say, "Well, Chuck, when are you going to retire?" I mean, every time I go somewhere, I was at UGM a few weeks ago, and I can't tell you how many times, and it said, "Hell, are you still here?" Yeah, I'm still here. So, the thing about it is, and I tell everybody is that I enjoy what I do. I really do, and I love the people I do it with every day. I have a great team. I have some of the smartest people I've ever worked with. And we solve some of the most hideous problems every day, technical and non-technical. And so I tell my boss and I tell his boss and others, if I'm not being effective and I'm not doing what I need to do for this organization, God, somebody please tell me if I can't see it myself.
Yeah.
And previously, like I said, I spent 24 years at one job. I was not being effective. I knew I wasn't being effective anymore. It was time for me to go and let somebody else take that seat that could affect change in the organization. So I think for me, I do it every day. And I think anybody who's sitting in the CIO seat, if they're not doing that self-evaluation, if they're not self-aware of what their impact is on their organization, then I'm not sure you're in the right seat.
Well, Chuck
Yeah.
Christian, let me ask you,
Yeah.
why and how does one become ineffective? So you said you were at a place, you were there many, many
Yep.
years. I mean, you're an amazing human being and
Well,
you're
thank you.
effective now,
Yeah.
but something happened there where things just got stale and you weren't being effective and you needed a change. Why and how does that happen?
Well, it's a really good question. I've asked myself a lot about that. Is that I think a couple of things. And I did this at another job as well. I did everything they wanted me to do, and we were in a position that there needed to be another gear, and I wasn't sure I had the other gear, to tell you the truth. And I was at a point in my career, and my children had well, they grew up there. They were all graduated from college, and there needed to be a transition. The organization was transitioning. The leadership was changing, and I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to be effective as people that I had worked with for 20 something years. They were retiring, and it was, so it was, I guess, self doubt, and I needed another level of challenge. And so I got that, and now I'm in a job that I get that level of challenge every other
That's
day. So
fascinating.
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's for me to get to Bill's point, it is every day. And I think the mistake we old timers make, we potentially could make is setting that retirement timeline.
right.
Because when you do that, you say, well, I get 2 more years. Well, now what have you just done? Are you going to take on that big project? Are you going to, what are you going to start doing? Are you going to start planning for retirement? Or are you going to stay focused, stay energized, keep the organization moving forward? So you've got to be careful about that retirement mindset. And I think about it all the time, and I've done that where I've said, I get 2 more years, and I back off of that. I've had the conversation with my boss, and I constantly back off. I'm like, you know what? I can't do that because I don't want to give him the impression that, I'm on my way out the door and he's going to be looking for signs of disengagement and my senior leadership team as well. I don't want that. I want them to rely on me. So I dig in and I just let the time pass, and I'll know when it's time. And I already told my boss, look, when it is time, I'm going to give a year. I'm going to
That's
give you a
nice.
year notice, and we're going to work on, we already are, work on succession planning, get the right people in place going forward, make a nice clean turnover, and go from there. But you can't, you put that retirement date out there. I think it just becomes a problem. I'm known as the anchor. I'm the oldest one on our leadership team, President's Council. I'm known as the anchor. They call me the anchor because I sit there and I listen, and I'm the anchor because I either confirm the direction or I say, 20 years ago, I
Yeah,
ran
yeah.
into
In my
I do
day,
that kind of stuff with them. Right, right. And so I love that role. That's my
yeah,
role, and I love that role. And I don't want to give it up, right. And that's when I know I'm being valuable. When people say, Chuck, you're the anchor of that
right,
team,
right.
that's when I know I'm still being valuable. So anyway.
Well, Chuck Christian,
Yep.
Chuck Podesta. Hold on a second. I love the concept of a year is a long time. Maybe you could do less, but
Sure.
the idea I love about that is if there is anything kicking around in anyone's head that, oh, I got to keep an eye on him and see if I can sense when he's leaving, it takes that off the table because then
Yeah.
they go, I don't have to worry about it. I know he's going to let me know and he's going to give us plenty of time. So I don't even have to think
Right.
about it. Otherwise, it's sort of kicking around in the back of their head. They're trying to read the tea leaves. The other thing
Exactly.
I wrote down, Chuck Christian, as you were talking, is that for the old timers out there, and I'll include myself, on that. 'Cause you look at my hair. You shouldn't let, and this I think this could happen. You shouldn't let those constant questions about retirement impact your thinking about retirement. If you are content and you are happy and you are being effective, because it could happen. If you're continually asked, hey, what are you still doing here? Hey, when are you retiring? You go, well, maybe I should retire. Maybe I am here too long. So my thought when you were saying that was, don't let that happen. Do your thing and don't worry about that. Because I could see that sort of being, starting to creep into your head. What are your thoughts on that, Chuck Christian?
Well, I mean, I think that you can't sow self doubt And I think there's feedback that you can request from the people around you, and I think that's extremely important. My job is to make sure that the people that report to me are successful, and I'm grooming them for when I'm not here. Years ago, when I was at Good Sam and my father was actively dying, I took off 2 weeks and went to be with him. And he was in the hospital, and he asked me, he says, are you sure you can be gone for this time? I said, Daddy, if the people that are that are that work for me, if they can't run that place without me, then I haven't done my job.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that I need to make them successful. So if I'm not here, that it's going to continue on, and then there's somebody behind me is going to take my role. I'm almost certain of it, because I'm working to kind of groom those individuals. But it's going to be a hard choice, and I don't get to make that, which is a really good thing for me. But I don't think that, if you can't dwell on it. I mean, I had a director that he had a very specific time when he got a certain age, he was going to retire. And I got him to stay a year longer than that, but he retired, and he's very, very pleased and very happy. But that was his goal, and so my goal is to continue to be effective and get to and do things like this today. And so the other thing I will tell you is I didn't hit the lottery, so we're having a conversation today. If I'd hit the 1.8 billion, I'd be phoning in from somewhere else.
There you
I
go.
love it. All right, let me
And-
ask. I want to get one more question in here.
Sure.
Well, Chuck Podesta, is there something you want to jump in there with? Otherwise, I have
No,
one.
I just said similar.
Yeah,
I have three direct reports, three VPs.
yeah,
What I've been working with them on succession plan, and I told all three of them, all three of you are going to be a CIO someday,
yeah,
either here or somewhere else.
yeah.
And that's been my promise to them. And they're motivated. What I didn't realize when I did that was now they're motivated even more. They're great at what they do, but now they're even motivated even more to step in, and really support me
Good.
going forward. So that's been great.
All
Yeah.
right, I just want to
All
get
right.
in one more topic question that I think
Yeah.
is important, and then I'm going to let everyone go. Um, we see a lot of times that health system IT executives will take a detour in their career, or they'll take go down a different path, and they'll wind up either in consulting or with a vendor. Sometimes that works long term, and then they sort of bounce around in that space, and sometimes they wind up coming back to the the provider side. Um, do you have any thoughts there on how to know if that shift is right for you, or if somehow there's a way to know that in your heart you belong on the provider side? Chuck Christian, we'll go to you first.
Well, I've done it. I started out my career I went to the dark side on the vendors doing implementations and that kind of stuff, because I'm a clinician, and so I understood the workflows and stuff. But then had the opportunity to get back into to a hospital, and I literally, Anthony, I don't know if you know this about me. I graduated high school on the 6th of June in 1971. On the 7th of June, I stepped into a hospital, into a radiology program. So I've been in a hospital for a very, very long time. But I had my own consulting practice for a period of time, and I stepped out and worked at a health information exchange that I had
Yeah,
had relationship with for a very, very long time at the Indiana state level. And so I think that having those experiences, um, I like working in a hospital, and I think that it's a calling, because something about taking care of patients. And maybe it was because it's my early career involvement of having hands-on patient contact in the radiology department and taking care of it. And my wife's a nurse, and being involved in that healthcare. I think it's and you sure as hell don't get into healthcare IT because you want to get rich. And so you can do that in sales or consulting in other places. But I think that we're having an impact upon the community that we have the pleasure of serving.
Excellent answer. Chuck Podesta, we'll give you the
Yeah, I think
final word.
bad idea to do it. Unless you're starting your own business, that's a whole different thing. You're an entrepreneur, that's fine. But I agree, going to the dark side, a bad idea. I mean, think of it the old days, you know, you were a movie star and then you started doing TV commercials. That was a downward slide, right? That was your downward slide. To me, when you go to a vendor, that's a downward slide. And again, nothing, you know, we call it the dark side. I have a great relationship with vendors, so no hit on them. But you know, my example was, you know, I thought I was going to retire back in 2019, 2020, leaving an organization. I was thinking, you know, yeah, I think I'm going to go maybe work with some consulting companies, do that kind of thing, get out of this CIO thing. And then COVID hit. Luckily, I got into an interim position, jazzed me out, you know, all the things we had to do for COVID. I was like, wow, I could have missed this as a CIO. And that changed my whole mindset. Like, no, don't ever, if you're a CIO, you know, stay in it until you retire. Don't go back and forth like that. Just stay committed. And I think, Chuck, you have a calling. The IT is available now to help your clinicians and your patients that we've never had before, and do that. So I know I'll probably get some vendor hate mail on it, but that's okay.
Listen, I love it. I love it. I love this. I think this has been absolutely brilliant. And I'm so happy that we had to have this conversation. It was absolutely wonderful. Regarding continuing education, for those of you who need that, or who want to qualify for that, you can use the final slide in this deck as proof you were here. If you want to sponsor an event with us, you can reach out to Nancy Wilcox from our team, and you'll get an email when the on-demand recording of this event is ready, probably tomorrow morning. And you can go to our website to register for upcoming panels. With that, I want to thank our tremendous panel, my very good friends for many, many years. I consider myself an old timer along with these two and Bill Spooner. Thank you guys so much for doing this and doing it constantly and all the time, and I appreciate it. And thank you, our attendees, for coming. And with that, everybody have an absolutely wonderful day. Take care,
Great.
guys.
Hey, thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
you. Y'all take care.